Um, we were just saying, are you in the restaurant right now?
Yes, I am.
Wow. Is that standard practice for you to be there at what's 10 o'clock in the morning there for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, pretty standard practice for me. We're closed Mondays and Tuesdays, but fortunately, unfortunately, but
Yeah.
I'm here 7 days a week.
Wow.
It's my home, man. Like
Yeah.
I feel just as comfortable here as in my own apartment.
I used to find like there was nothing in the world more peaceful than the restaurant when nobody was in it.
Oh my God, it's my
Is that a
favorite.
weird thing?
It's my
Right?
favorite.
It's just like the silent hum of compressors, hopefully.
Yeah, right.
Not too silent. Um, but yeah, we're gonna dive into some things that we were discussing earlier, some food waste stuff. I'd love to know a little bit more about your background. Again, super casual conversation, and we could talk about anything. We could talk about the crime happening outside your window right now. Whatever you want.
Yeah, right, right. Well, I mean, we're not gonna talk about that. It happens, but
It's the ambiance.
right.
So you started in Detroit. Is that correct? What got you started there?
Oh my God.
How'd you find your passion for this business?
So I started cooking when I was 14 at a restaurant called Peabody's. It was a longtime staple in a suburban city called Birmingham, pretty affluent
Mm-hmm.
and pretty wealthy suburb.
It's a hot little
The
market
place,
now.
yeah, the place has been was there for a very long time. I don't remember how I got in there. I just remember that someone I knew one of the owners and said they were looking for a busboy. So I went in and I was like, I'll take a job. I was a busboy for maybe like 4 months. Noticed that there was a dishwasher. This guy, his name was Jimmy. He was awesome. He looked like he was straight out of Dazed and Confused. But he was tired, man. This guy was working Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, just double shifts. And I was like, you really like doing that? And he's like, I fucking hate it, dude. And I'm like, well, like I want to make more money. I'll wash dishes Monday night. Why not? And he's like,
Yeah.
all right, like let's talk to the owner. And so he trained me up to wash dishes. And then eventually relieved him of his double shifts. I did that for another like 4 months, and then one day I got a call from the owner, and her name's Susan Peabody, and she called and she said, "Norm, are you interested in cooking?" And I was like, "Does it pay more money?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'll pay you $17.50 an hour." I was 15 years old. And I was like, that sounds great. Let's learn how to cook. But then when I started cooking, there was a young man. He was young at the time. He had just got done working at a place called Tribute, which was a guy named Takashi, a chef that's pretty famous in Chicago. He had a
Mm-hmm.
one-star Michelin, like French-Japanese concept here in the early days of the Michelin Guide for Chicago. And he had a place, though, prior that was deemed as the best place between New York and Chicago to eat in like the early 90s called Tribute. And so this guy that came in, he had these like, French Laundry aspirations to turn this prime rib place around. You know what I mean? Like, and it was insane. It wasn't for him. But he was a young guy that took a executive chef position. But, he kind of looked at me and was like, hey, you got potential. And one day he gave me the French Laundry cookbook to read. And that was the first time I
Yeah.
realized that food was different than Red Lobster, you know? So I read the French Laundry cookbook and I was like, oh, wow, food can be pretty artistic. It can be fun and challenging. And so kind of just went from there, man. I just kept cooking and cooking. At first, it was all about the money. Felt like the cool kid in my group of friends that were, like, let's be honest, like
Actually had
16.
cash.
Yeah, 16, I pull out a $750 check for the week and we're like, yeah, let's go buy that ounce of weed we're about to smoke. You know what I mean? Like,
We
I
could
felt
be
like the cool
friends.
friend, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, just kind of took off from there, and then I got to be near 18 years old, right before graduating high school, and my mom was kind of like, "What are you gonna do with your life?" And at that point, I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't, you know what? I'm just gonna go to culinary school. You know what I mean? If I got to go to college to make you happy, I'm gonna go to culinary school because I already liked cooking. Because this gentleman Derek Watson helped install that into me with the French Laundry cookbook and kind of just let me know that the world's a lot bigger than Red Lobster, right? Um, and yeah, just kind of just went from there and just kept at it. Repetition, practice, not giving up on one thing, focusing on one thing for a very long time, And at this point, I'm 34 years old, been cooking for 20 years.
Wow. That's so funny. That was almost the exact same story that I had. I had two buddies. They had money. And I'm like, wait, where the fuck are you guys getting this money from? And they're like, oh, we work as busboys. We're down the street. I'm like, the hell is a busboy? Went down there. They hooked me up with a job. There's some beautiful waitress who was the first time I ever saw a belly button ring was like, follow me around, you'll make money. And I left that night with like $80 in cash tips. And I was like, I love this business. And like 2 weeks later, the chef used to smoke a joint while cooking ribeyes on the grill, had huge gauge earrings, and drove a Duster. And he was like, you want to learn how to cook eggs? And I was like, sure. And he's like, you start today. And he put a chef coat on me, and I did like the little omelet station. And the buffet's like, just throw the oil, throw the shit in the pan, and then just dump it on the plate. They're gonna love it. They're just here to drink anyway. I'm like, okay. And that was the beginning. That was like the beginning of the end, as they say.
Awesome.
So, yeah. But I mean, I feel like I learned a lot of valuable lessons there, like in that first restaurant, that I still carry with me today. Do you feel that way?
100%. I mean, it was, the first restaurant I worked in was definitely a big grind. Like, I've never worked in a place again that did that amount of covers, volume, and just the different eclectic group of people in that kitchen and what they did outside of there. I mean, just they were all old cats too. I mean, I was always the youngest person in the kitchen for quite some time. Now it's a little bit of the opposite, but it was really interesting because I felt like a lot of it helped me mature in general, right? And be able to view life and the trajectory and the process very differently than someone just coming out of culinary school, walking into a restaurant that's really nice and working there, right?
Yeah. I like remember, at that age, you used to think work was like, oh God, work was like work. And I remember going there and being like, everybody here is pretty happy. Like they were all like, had these horrible, like you said, they're washing dishes, they're chopping up onions, some guys hauling kegs but they're all laughing, telling jokes. I'm like, this is all right. These people are all right.
Yeah.
It feels like a vibe, but then you felt like, I don't have to explain this to anybody. This is cool. I love going to work. I used to hate when they're like, oh, you don't have to come in today. I'm like, damn, now I got to do yard work or something.
Right. Yeah, no, it definitely felt like an escape to reality outside of there, right?
Yeah.
And it just kind of felt cool to fit in a land of misfit toys.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I feel like that's where my attention deficit disorder was hugely beneficial. Like as a busboy, like that table needs water, this one needs bread. They're calling for me in the kitchen. I got to take the garbage out over there, and it was like a skill that they actually embraced. Like, wow, you're really on top of it. Whereas, like, I felt like the rest of the world, they were like, all right, get it together.
Yeah, slow down. Slow down. Take a minute.
Slow down. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
No. I took Ritalin growing up as a kid. I was prescribed, Adderall and Ritalin and stuff. I haven't touched that in many, 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 many years. Once I found cooking, I felt like I stopped taking Adderall.
Yeah.
To be honest. But I remember everybody was always like, "Oh, slow down, slow down." Now it's like, I tell cooks, I tell my wife, I tell my kids, life's not waiting for you, so you better hurry up.
Yeah. Agree, man. That's a great lesson. Now you then moved to Chicago in what, 2015?
2015.
And you started 2015, and you immediately started working with the Alinea Group, or tell me about that.
Yeah, so when I left Detroit, I left positions, higher up positions. I was running a couple places that were pretty predominant in Detroit. But Detroit's kind of like a big fish, small pond city, and it still is. I got a lot of love for them, but their food scene still has got a lot to, leaves a lot for me, to be desired in comparison to New York, Chicago, San Francisco at that time. It's definitely changed a little bit now, but I figured, I was like, man, I really want to take my career steps further, and to do that, I kind of need to take a step back to take a leap forward, right? So I applied to work at Alinea. Obviously, at the time, the only 3-star Michelin restaurant in Chicago.
Yeah.
They were doing the remodel. They were in Madrid doing a pop-up, and they're like, hey, we're not going to be open for X amount of time, but we have space at the aviary if you're interested in staging. So, they flew me out there. They paid for me to stage, which was really cool. A couple days. Then they offered me a job, and it's way different than what I was getting paid. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to go for it. So I ended up at the Aviary, which was their high-end cocktail bar where they do serve food. I was working underneath Dan Peretta, who was the sous chef at Alinea. He had just moved into his first executive chef position within the group, and that was at the Aviary. Very talented chef, great attention to detail, and started working there. And I realized quickly, man, I got to catch up real quick. There's a lot of things that I don't
Yeah.
know, or the attention to detail, or the way they work service, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, there was a lot of things that I had that some of these young cooks out in there didn't have, and that was a hard work ethic, right? Already, that was familiarity with volume and like certain, managing people, things like that. So I worked there for honestly maybe like 6 to 9 months. I won't touch base on how that ended, but basically I wanted to stop working at the aviary. I wanted to move into Next. I was allowed to, but then Dan was he was a little upset about it, and there were some words exchanged that basically was like, yeah, screw you,
Yeah.
I'm out.
So wait, you mean you're a chef you have a dramatic exit from a restaurant? I never heard about
Right.
that.
Well, it was really weird because I've never had
Yeah.
that. Was like my first experience having that ever.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty straight shooter. I mean, I grew up gardening with my grandpa, who was a master gardener. Opened up a huge nursery in Southeast Michigan called Bourdines. He was the president of it, so he was a really hardworking man. And so when I was a young kid, my weekends were spent working in his garden, and the rewards were either an A&W root beer float or a new baseball bat for the little league game,
Yeah.
whatever it was,
Right.
or even
Yeah.
money. So like it was a very I was always very like loyalty is everything. How you leave is really the best, the biggest impression you're
Yeah.
gonna leave. Character is a really big thing for me in my life in general. I mean, if you don't have character, what do you have? I
Right.
don't care how much money you
Yep.
have. I don't care how good of a chef you
Yep.
are. If you don't have character, you're shit. You know.
Yep.
Um, and integrity, right? So yeah, I left there. In the meantime, I had staged at a couple places. I had staged at Schwa, which was a one-star Michelin tasting menu, very against the grain. I'm sure you heard of it. Rap
Yep.
metal blaring, no
Yeah.
servers,
Yeah.
some odd nights of drinking, stuff like that. And so I went and staged there. Didn't know if I was going to get the job. I got a call from the previous owner I was working for in Detroit. They were opening up a new restaurant. It wasn't my stiz, but they were going to pay for me to move back. They were going to pay me well, et cetera, at a point where I felt vulnerable.
Yeah.
And then I accepted the job. And literally, maybe 4 hours later, the chef de cuisine, Wilson Bauer of Schwa, calls me. He's like, "Hey, we want to hire you. We like the way you stashed." And then I was like, "Ah, shit, what do I do? I'm going to feel like a chump. I go back to Detroit after 9 months with my tail in between my leg. That's not happening." And so I, made a really tough call.
Yeah.
And that tough call wasn't making the decision of where to work. The tough call was telling the guy that I accepted the job that I'm not going to accept the job anymore. He was pretty upset, and I stayed and I worked at Schwa. I worked there for, God, 5.5 years after that, man. I was a cook for about a year and a half, and then I was the sous chef for maybe a couple months. And then one day, Wilson was done with the job, and he showed me like the last four things I didn't know how to do in the entire restaurant. And on the right when he felt that I had it right, he dropped his keys on the table and said, "See you later. You got this, chef." On a fucking busy
He,
Friday night at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So I
wow.
didn't even have time to call Michael Carlson and be like, "Hey, this is going on." I didn't have time to say. I just said, "All right, boys, buckle up. Let's go." You know what I mean?
Best way to do it, though.
Yeah. And
Right? Like, take the training wheels off. Just get out there.
I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it. I didn't know if I was going to be able to perform at that level. I didn't know if I was going to be able to create food at that level. Nothing at that moment. All I knew is that night, the show still had to go on.
There's trains
Um,
leaving the station one way or the other.
yeah, yeah. And so, from there, it just kind of kept going and blossoming. And, I was able, under the direction of Carlson, to find my own creative voice very quickly, put my lasting impressions on the restaurant, my mark on the restaurant, and
Mhm.
help elevate it in many different ways, not just with the cuisine and the service, but also like from a business aspect. Like before, Schwa was only reservation only via a phone call. If we didn't answer, fuck off, basically.
Yeah.
It really kind of
Does
came
that
down to
happen?
one day, huh?
Does that actually happen?
Well, it definitely did happen before. Now they're on talk, and that
Yeah.
was definitely my doing to get them on talk. One day,
Yeah.
Carlson came to me, and because these people would get phony credit card numbers, and we would charge them if they didn't show up a cancellation fee. And so one day we had like a lot of people not show up, and then Carlson kind of chewed me out a little bit. He's like, "Chef, what's going on? This is my business. What are you doing? Blah blah blah." And I'm like, "Yo, dude, like I did my job. by your system, what you said to do, how it's supposed to work. And honestly, if you want to just alleviate this problem ever again, because I'm sick of hearing about this, let's move to a reservation system that is prepaid. And he's like, well, I'm afraid that's going to lose our allure of who we are, and that's part of who we are. And I'm like, yeah, but it's times are changing, man. You've been around for like 15 years at this point. Like, let's get ahead a little bit. And
Good for
honestly, it
you
was
for
the
pushing that.
best thing that we ever did at Schwa at that time frame.
Yeah.
Revenue literally doubled for the week consistently for the entire time I was there for the next 3 years. We were
Yeah.
fully booked every single night, Tuesday through Saturday. We had people coming back that were like, man, I tried this reservation 10 years ago. I gave up because it was such a hassle. Now I was able to get it. And so like
Yeah.
we were bringing back clientele that gave up on their reservations, bringing back people that just all kinds of stuff. It was really awesome. And that was able to, help grow his business, which was really, really, really cool. Which I really think fostered a really unique relationship that me and Carlson still have to this day, and a great amount of fondness and respect for each other.
So in a way, I mean, not in a way, but it sounds like you were kind of tasked with holding on to that Michelin status.
I always, yeah, I would have lost my job if we didn't get that.
And
If I
so
lost a star, I lost my job.
I talk about that, because you came. It's not like, I feel like so many people think that these Michelin trained chefs, and I worked in a Michelin kitchen for a while, and it was a huge eye opener. Just from like, hey, the blue tape has to be straight. Don't rip the edges on the tape. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, right. Like, but what was that transition like? What did it feel like to have that type of pressure? How does it compare to working in your other restaurants that you were in?
I'm gonna be honest. How did it compare to other restaurants prior?
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
it
your
was
experience
completely
there.
different. But in terms
Yeah,
of pressure, no pressure, because all the passion was there.
yeah,
And that was the
that's
difference. I was super passionate about what we were doing. I was
mm,
super passionate about how good we can get. I was super passionate about progressing, and I was super passionate about myself progressing as well as myself being disciplined and
yeah,
really growing as a chef. Yeah, sure, there was a little bit of stress always in the back of your mind about losing a Michelin star and thinking that you screwed up, thinking that maybe this guest didn't have a good time. But at the end of the day, I explained this to my niece the other day. My niece is, she just graduated DePaul. She's complaining about work. She's complaining about jobs and pay and this and that. And I'm sitting here and telling her, like, life's kind of like a game of baseball. All right, it's gonna throw you curveballs. It's gonna throw you screwballs, knuckleballs, fastballs, sinkers, all of it. It doesn't matter if you hit a home run. It just matters
yeah,
your average. And
yeah.
if you keep going up to bat at that plate every day with the same idea, the same consistency, the same integrity, the same energy and motivation, your average will continuously, slowly get higher.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. Like literally just every day I went in there with the same mindset, with a new goal in mind. So
I
my
love that.
average got better and better and better and better every day naturally, just from that mindset.
I love that. There's a group that I work with here on the real estate side, mapping them. They're growing pretty quickly, open 2-3 units a year, and that's their philosophy on site selection. They are not going to get stuck in, they have multiple partners, they have investors, so they have to grow, right, to keep making money. And they're like, we don't have to hit a home run every time. If we hit a couple doubles and triples, as long as we're out in the market and we're showing up and we're being consistent, then that's how we're going to progress. That's how we're
Yeah.
going to continue to grow. So I love analogies. And I love baseball, so that's a good one for me too.
Awesome.
So now you're there, and when do you? What is that breakup like?
Well, I mean, if you know about Schwa, obviously there's some drinking and things going on in the back of the house
Yeah,
that makes Schwa Schwa. It got to a point for me, because I'm not a big drinker. I'm gonna be honest with you. I just smoke pot, dude. At that time frame, and it got to a point where I had to learn how to manage people as if they were Jekyll and Hyde. I had to learn
yeah,
how to manage, just say a name, Joey, for instance. That am I gonna get Joey drunk today, or am I gonna get Joey sober? And I had to learn how to
yeah.
manage him. And that got, that just honestly, that was the one thing that led me away from there. It got tiring,
That's
doing
that's a
that.
lot.
And I wanted to achieve more, but I didn't see being able to achieve more having to manage people in that manner. But also at that same time frame, I needed a break, man. I had already been
Yeah,
cooking for since I was 14 nonstop, missed all my friends' birthdays, my birthdays, family events, all the thing. I literally put
big
everything I
time.
had into my career. And regardless of what was going on outside of me, it was pretty selfish, but, I'm happy I did it. And, I was just like, I saved up enough money. I made enough money to be like, hey, I can take a break for a while.
Yeah.
So I looked at 5 different places to move to. I looked at Paris, LA, Austin, Mexico, and God, I think it was San Francisco. Um, but I didn't want to work. So Mexico was, I'd been there a couple times, and it was the first choice. It
Yeah.
was like, all right, I could drive there. I had a Cadillac that I had just bought a year prior that I didn't want to give up. It was like my dream growing up as a boy in Detroit was
What
to
kind
get
of
a
Cadillac?
Cadillac. It was just a Cadillac CTS luxury package, but like
Nice.
it was something when I was a kid in Detroit, you made it if you had
Oh
a
yeah.
Cadillac, So I
Oh
was
yeah.
like, that was one of my dream cars, and so I got it a year prior, and I was like, man, if I go to France, I got to ship this over, and that's going to cost a lot of money. If I go X, Y, and Z, I'm going to have to ship it. If I go to Mexico, I can just drive there, you know. So
Yeah.
I drove the Cadillac from Chicago down to Cancun and Tulum, and then I ended up in Tulum.
That's amazing. And you
Yeah,
were
so
there.
the breakup at Schwa wasn't, obviously it was, Carlson was disheartened and upset, but he understood and he was very supportive of everything, and he thanked me for my time, and I thanked him for his time. And honestly, like 5.5 years in one place, that's pretty damn good, especially for a Michelin star restaurant,
Yeah.
like pretty good. So I felt pretty good about that time of length, it wasn't like I was 6 months and out.
Right.
Um, yeah, so I ended up in Mexico, ended up in Tulum. Prior to going down there, I kind of put some feelers out there about jobs just out of curiosity. I ended up meeting a lady named Karen Young who had a restaurant called Wild down on the Strip. Very unassuming, quiet place. To be completely honest, and she'll agree with me, had shitty food at the time frame. She asked me if I was interested in being the executive chef, and I went there and I ate, and I was like, hell the fuck no, this is way too much work for me. And then she was like, I knew you were going to say that. So what about redoing my menu? And let's do it on a contractual basis. And so I was like,
Oh,
well, I'm just literally just sitting here playing soccer every night in the field across the street, doing whatever I want in Mexico. I guess I could work a little. It's getting a little boring. It's been about 4 months of not working.
nice.
And so I took on that contract job, which was definitely a challenge, but really awesome. Um, but had built the foundation for the next 5 years after that. She's now my business partner here at Carino. I'm
Oh,
still the
sweet.
executive chef of the restaurant down in Wild, in
Mhm.
Tulum.
So you've
Down
gone back
during
and forth quite a bit.
quite a bit, quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I came back after the pandemic. I came back to Chicago, drove all the way back up. When they were about to close the border, came back to literally a ghost town, right? Everything closed down, everybody
Yeah.
inside. Um, and then maybe like halfway into the pandemic, I got offered a job for a tasting menu at a place called Brass Heart, who, had failed the first 3 years to garner the accolade they were searching for. And then asked me, I think they had a breakup with their chef partner, and then asked me if I was interested in being the chef. And I was like, you're going to pay me pretty all right. Tasting menu. I can do what I want. Middle of pandemic, I don't see a job. I didn't even know where the industry was going to be at that point.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll take it. Took the job, opened up for like a month. They shut us back down, and we were doing takeout for like a year. And then we were open for a year after that. And then the restaurant closed. The owner closed in June of last year. Um, it was just a cumulative of the past 3.5 years that led up to the closure, to be honest. There was a lot
Right.
of mistakes that were made in the beginning and decisions that were made in the beginning that really set them
Yeah.
up for failure for the future.
That's. I
Um,
mean, can you talk about any of those, or are you under NDA? Because that's 3.5 years. It seems to be like that is like when you
I
make
could
those
definitely talk.
mistakes.
There's no NDA.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
shame in talking about what going because it's helped me. It's
Yeah.
what's helped me be successful in the same
Yeah.
space
Right.
and with a different restaurant now.
Yeah. Exactly.
It overhired, uh, underqualified, overpaid staff. I mean, this they opened up with a kitchen that, dude, this kitchen literally fits 4 people. They had a pastry chef, a pastry sous chef. They had an executive chef, a chef de cuisine, a sous chef, 5 cooks, general manager, 6 servers in a restaurant that seats
That'll do
22
it.
people. Okay.
Yeah.
And then just decisions that were
That'll do
made,
it alone.
with buying, purchasing, you know, it, you know, it almost felt as if the concept was how luxurious can we be without true intention? So like wine just being expensive and buying the nicest of the nicest bottles, but with no true purpose, no true reason behind why you're doing it, right? There was no identity to the food or the cuisine of the restaurant and what makes it stand out. It was just food in a very nice setting with very nice banquettes with a nice chandelier, nice wine and nice glasses, but nice service. And that was it. There was no
Yeah.
character, there was nothing to it.
Yeah.
And in Chicago, you have to, to be in, you have to stand out from the pack. There's too many of those places. Those are
Yeah.
the Gibsons, right? Those are the
Yeah.
RPMs. You want that experience, go
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Um, and then there was a lot of, I think decisions made with like spending too much money on PR and a social media person and a photography person. Like the photography guy that we had at the time frame when I came on, he was the original guy as well. I mean, this guy was getting paid like 4 to 5 G's a month, and I saw this guy
Jeez.
like maybe once every 2 months. I remember it got to
Wow.
a point near the end of his tenure with Brasser that I was like, I talked to the owner and I was like, yo, like, where's this guy been? He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, this guy lives in LA now, and he comes here once every 3 months, and we still pay him $4 grand a month
Oh my
to do
God.
nothing. Well, I didn't even
It's
know he
one of a
moved to
thing.
LA, and it's like,
Oh my God.
dude, come on, man. Like, like this is silly, dude. And
Yeah.
just
And then
watching kind of money get bleeded out in really weird ways. I won't touch on some of those things since this is
yeah.
obviously recorded. But there was definitely some things that were not honest
Yeah.
happening in the back end that I had no control of.
Yeah.
Which also then put me in really shitty situations where for the first year of working here at Brass Heart, I was cooking with just me and one guy named Juan and no dishwasher. We were washing pans in between turns, cooking a
Oh
16
my
course
God.
tasting
For a
menu
year?
because for a year because we couldn't
Oh my.
afford a dishwasher for some reason.
Oh
But
my
all
God.
the money was spent in the beginning with the previous owner or the previous chef, and they kind of just
My God.
expended it, and that was it. And I was there to kind of try to save it.
I've been in some very similar situations, so I can relate to that. So now you're in Carino is in that space.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
So
what.
he
So
closed
they.
the space in June. He gave me a week's heads up. During that time frame, I had gotten married, had a kid, the whole nine. So like, when I got a week's heads up, I was like, dude, fuck you, straight up. Like you've been making me
Yeah.
cook by myself. I remember the last night I cooked here at
God,
Brass Heart. I
that's
cooked for
terrible.
16 people all at once, James Beard nominees and winners, and I was by myself. They had a fantastic time, but they knew I didn't have a fantastic time because they would come around the corner and just see me fucking sweating my dick off cooking by myself.
Awful.
And this was all just to please the owner at the time frame to help him with his money and his issues, right? Um, and so whatever, I was pretty pissed off. I was like, you gave me a week heads up. I got a family, dude. Like literally a literally just born 6-month-old baby boy. And my wife and kids are Mexican. They're born in Mexico. My wife and kids are still down there. We've been going through an immigration process for many years
Wow.
now. It's almost over. So like I was supporting an apartment down there, life down there, as well as my own life up here. So it's every dollar was pretty detrimental. So to
Damn.
get that heads up, I was pretty pissed off.
Yeah.
And whatever. So it closed, and I still had that job as the executive chef at Wild in Tulum. So my business partner Karen down there, she had asked me, she's like, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I'm gonna go interview at places, stuff like that. So I took a lot of interviews. I'm not gonna name them, but really good positions, really good pay, stuff like that in Chicago, but none of it spoke out to me. There was always a little stipulation. And I just felt like at this point in my career, I was like, you put stipulations on me, you're not going to get the best of me. It's really simple. You just let me do what I want, and you'll get the best product you're going to get, from me, of me, and everything. And nobody really understood that. And I understood that because they didn't know me, right? But then
Yeah.
Karen stepped in and she was like, hey, I think it's possible. How much money do we need to get that space? How much money do we need to do what you want to do? And so we started making a business plan, writing the numbers down, and then we're like, man, wow, like we don't really need that much money, if we can work out a deal, because there was already all the nice glassware, all the nice silverware, all the stuff that was already here, that we could utilize in some sort of fashion. And then so we just came back to the owner and we were like, yo, let's work out a deal. We want the space. Took a few months to work it out, but we got a great deal, like as a purchase asset sale, like on the fridges and the Paco
Nice.
jet, all the pieces of equipment I needed that would cost a restaurant a
Ooh,
lot of money in the
Taco Jet.
beginning.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we worked out a deal. The place never hit the market. We looked at other spaces as
Uh,
well in the city, but then I just believed in this space. I believed in the neighborhood, and I believed in I really love the layout of the kitchen. This restaurant prior to Brass Heart housed a 2 Michelin star restaurant called 42 Grams, which I don't know if you've heard of. There was a guy that
yeah.
he bottled his wife at one point, and that's how it,
Mhm.
like, yeah,
Oh my God.
yeah.
Wild.
So that's the space
Wild.
I'm in. But that guy obviously has his problems, but the guy knew how to build the kitchen because he built this kitchen perfectly for a tasting menu, and the way it flows is so awesome. So I was
So
really in love with the setup too, and
you were in
yeah,
love with the
so
setup, even though you had like horrific experiences there. Like you didn't have
yeah,
any PTSD
because
stuff.
I had 2 years of looking at it, going, I would do this different. I would do this different. There used to be a wall in between the kitchen and the dining room that the owners of Brass Art put up, whereas previously at 42 Grams it was a counter, chef's counter. So I knew that wall could be taken down, and I was
Yeah.
like, that wall needs to come down. Like that wall needs to come down. We need to redo it. And so we started, me and my partner, we started talking about all the ideas. Basically, she just sat there and drilled me with what I wanted to do and my ideas, and she was the one that put it all on paper,
That's a
and put
good
all the
partner.
numbers together. So like
That's a good
she's
partner.
really awesome, honestly. I just sat there and talked, and she did all the work, and then my job after that was to take that piece of paper that she did and actually execute it, because now I had the blueprint that I probably wouldn't have put the time and effort into doing,
No,
you
that's
know?
huge. Yeah, I mean, for somebody to do that for you is, I mean, as somebody who's a creative, if you can just do your thing, and somebody else going to guide you along that path. I mean, that's what a partnership should be. But you
Yeah.
you mentioned now that you're in a section that you believe in the area. What makes you believe in the area? What section of Chicago are you in?
So we're in Uptown. Uptown is about 15 minutes north of the center of the city, about a few blocks away from Lake Shore Drive in Lake Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Uptown used to be 15 years ago a pretty grimy place, pretty rough place. There was a lot of mental health institutions, homeless shelters, things like that, and some of those still
Right.
exist to this day. But as gentrification happens everywhere, and as Chicago is, every neighborhood eventually becomes gentrified, and or the value comes up or whatever. So over the
Yeah.
past 10 years, um, there, that work has been going towards it, and then over the past 5 years specifically, they've been building luxury high rises. They put a
Oh
Stan's
yeah.
Donuts, and they don't put Stan's Donuts in any neighborhood in Chicago. It's got to be a
No.
neighbor,
Yeah.
a little bit of something going on. There's a couple concert venue halls like literally down the street from us, the Riviera, the Uptown Theater, and the Aragon Ballroom, which this area specifically was the entertainment district before the Great Fire of Chicago. So like,
Oh, very cool.
Al Capone era, stuff like that. This was where they were hanging out at the
I
Green Mill
love
down
that.
the street. So
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
this used to be the downtown Chicago, if you will, before the Great Fire. So the city has had plans to kind of return it to that its former glory for many years and work that way towards it. Um,
And I bet you got a good deal on the rent.
yeah, it's pretty all right. It's much better than the West Loop or the Lincoln Park or any of some of the places my buddies have restaurants in. Yes, it's a way better deal, way better
Wow.
deal. Um, but I also, I apart from it just being the history of the neighborhood, I did realize that no matter what, I was a dining destination restaurant because I was a higher priced tasting menu. So I'm
Yeah.
not looking for walk-ins. I'm not looking for foot traffic. I'm looking for reservations. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you put me in the city, as long as the product is there and the value's there and the experience is there and the quality's there and the standards there, the guests are going to come. And
Yeah.
that's what I looked at that neighborhood. I was like, it doesn't matter where I can go downtown and pay an extra 20 grand a month in rent, but it's not going to change how many reservations I get or not.
Yeah.
You know,
Ah, yeah. Yeah. Smart. That's
so
great. Now let's talk about something that I know you're passionate about, which is food waste. Um, it's becoming a hot topic lately, and everyone wants to know what the next guy's doing. But I feel like it's been more front and center for almost every restaurant, right? And it's just the fine dining side, I guess, has been a little bit more vocal about it. But I'd love to hear about what you're doing.
well, I think the fine dining side has been a little more vocal about it because it's a lot bigger of a problem.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, like we're sitting here, playing with tweezers and taking cucumbers to make ribbons and taking little balls out of them and bastardizing them and cutting them up to where you got a cucumber that's just got holes in it, right?
Yeah.
Or many different plethora of things just to get that perfect cut, because we are looking for a high quality experience that garners accolades. And unfortunately, with those comes precision, and
Yep.
technique. Um, so it's like, food waste is really kind of funny. Most restaurants, or any restaurant that says that they're 100% sustainable and all that, they're so full of shit. I can't believe it. Not a single restaurant is sustainable. All right, it doesn't
Right.
exist. But what we
It's a
can
catch
do
22.
is we can take our best step forward to minimize it as much as possible for our bottom line, to be able to pay our employees more, to be able to invest more in our own business, invest more in our guest. And that's kind of, the standpoint I take on it, is that I'm not 100% waste free. I'm not 100% sustainable, but we are putting a big step forward to make sure that our restaurant utilizes as much byproduct as possible. I mean, we literally have zero to no waste here in terms of most of our products. We brunoise onions for a specific dish, but then we use those same onions to marinate the suadero for the taco makazi. So I had this idea that, okay, I'm in this small space. I'm going to do a tasting menu. Is that enough? Is that enough experience to keep people coming? And I said, no, that's not going to be enough. I need to have a different outlet as well in the same venue. And then I started looking at a lot of the 2-star Michelin restaurants around the country, especially in Chicago. They always had like something else besides their tasting menu, whether they had, a bar where you can get bar bites, or they had some other sort of experience within their own venue. I was like, all right, we're gonna hop on this train of late night food that is high quality that Chicago didn't really have. And so I was like, let's do a taco makazi, because we're a Latin American inspired restaurant with a heavy Mexican influence. Um, and I was like, all right, we're gonna start this 10 p.m., 7 seats only, chef's counter taco makazi. We're gonna utilize our masa product that we have in house. We grind our own masa, we nixtamal our own corn, and this will be a way to showcase our masa program, as well as utilize byproduct from our tasting menu to create new items to not throw it out. Oh, I got you. You're back.
I'm back.
All right.
I don't
What
know.
was the
That was
last
really
thing you
weird.
caught me on?
You were just talking about, let's see, what were we talking about? You were talking about, I had asked you about,
Yep.
the area and food waste. You were
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about like
So okay,
cucumbers and,
so I think the last this thing still records as you got cut off, right?
yep, yep.
Okay, so I right when I noticed that you're off, I was telling you, I was talking about how I had the idea of the taco makazi to minimize food
Okay,
waste. So
perfect.
we are Latin American inspired with a heavy Mexican influence tasting menu. I mean, heavy Mexican influence. So I wanted to make sure that we were doing right by that. And one of the things was that we were going to get a masa machine. We were going to nixtamal our own corn. We were going to make all our
Sweet.
masa in house. But then I wanted it. Then I was like, okay, we need to showcase this as well. So we started the late night taco makazi, and that was to really showcase our masa program, but also utilize waste from the tasting menu. So that cucumber that I was talking about that had a bunch of holes in it from the cucumber balls for the pickled cucumber balls for the agua chili dish for the tasting menu is now being juiced and turned into a cucumber veil that we put over the agua chili for the taco makazi. I mean, there was multiple reasons why I did the taco makazi, but the number one reason was to cross utilize waste, or I hate saying the word waste because it's
Yeah,
byproduct, because it's
yeah,
perfectly
right.
fine, to utilize byproduct from our tasting menu, which every tasting menu has because of the precision and the techniques that they're trying to focus on, and repurpose it for a whole new experience in the same venue. So now I have two experiences in one small venue. So now I have guests that come in, they'll come in for the tacos, and then a week later they'll come in for the tasting menu or vice versa. So now I'm having return clientele in a high-end prefix setting multiple times.
Cool, cool.
Multiple.
Yeah.
We have guests that have been. We've been open for 6 months. We have guests that have been here 7, 8 times already. And
Oh my
most of those
God.
times going for the
Great.
taco makazi, which I think is pretty remarkable because a lot of these kind of places that are tasting menus, it's a one and done or once a year or once every couple of years kind of place, right? And you just count on new
Yeah.
clientele. And
And
so
how you said the taco omakase. Explain exactly how you structure that because most people are used to the sushi omakase. How do
yeah,
you structure that for Mexican type foods? I think is interesting when it comes to the food waste is, all the other cultures, even, American, whatever American cuisine really is, always utilize like, hey, we're going to crush these tomatoes because we need it for the puree, but we're going to take what's crushed here, we're going to dry them, we're going to make them into a spread for us, put some garlic in there, put some olive oil, we're
yeah.
going to spread it on a sand. Like that type of stuff is second nature. And now it's kind of like being in vogue to recycle this stuff and make it into something new. But
I
I got
mean,
off track there. But the
honestly, my
omakase is,
wife, she doesn't waste a goddamn thing. I'm over there fighting with
oh
her
yeah,
in the fridge, going, "What are you doing with this? Let's get rid of this." You know what I mean? She's like,
yeah,
"We
yeah,
can use
right,
it for something. We can use it for something."
yeah,
She
yeah,
is so Mexican, you wouldn't even believe it. You know, no, like
so
literally,
Mexican.
my wife is, she's a proud Mexican woman, and
Love that.
the structure of the taco makazi is basically it's at a counter, a bar style chef's counter. So that's one. That's basically an omakase, right? You're right in front of the chef. And the other part is it can change whenever the hell I want. It can change in the moment. You know what I mean? So it's truly whatever we feel like in the moment of giving you. I mean, there's tacos sometimes. I'm going to be honest with you. We don't even taste them as a taco together before we give them to a guest. But I
Oh,
sit there and I
really
go,
pulling the
okay,
curtain back.
this lobster that we got to use, I know it's going to be good fried tempura style with some togarashi red miso aioli and some pickled onions, avocado, and this and that. Like, it's got
Hell
to be
yeah,
good. There's no way it can't be good. And
yeah,
then we
right.
give it to the guests and they love it. So like there's that aspect of it being an omakase,
You
and
gotta
it's
test
quick.
it.
It's bang 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 bang. Like we give them 8, 9 courses, but they're like an hour long menu, in and out.
Wow,
So
that's
they
great.
sit at the counter and it's just like, here you go, here you go. The tortilla doesn't get better as it sits. And then we got the sous chef. He's sitting there hand making tortillas and throwing them on the clay comal while me and the other guys are running around getting the agua chilies together, or the setup for it, and then serving the guests and talking to them about it.
Super cool, man.
And it literally just like, I mean, we'll end up like we'll change a dish. Like we had a salsa nayarit lobster dish in our first like couple months of the menu, of the tasting menu. We took it off, and then we started repurposing that lobster stock into a lobster guajillo salsa for lobster taco. You know what I mean? Whereas
Yeah,
we didn't have a
right.
home for that anymore in our tasting menu, and there was only 3 places that could go. It can go into staff meal, it can go into trash, or it's going to go into the taco makazi. And so we don't go that option of the trash. We go either staff meal or taco makazi, but primarily just hits taco makazi. right?
That's
Because at the
great.
end of the day, that helps my bottom line as a restaurant, and for me to be successful in the kind of dining that we are doing, as well as be able to pay our associates a very competitive living wage. You
Yeah.
know.
And if you were to give some advice to, I mean, for a chef, that should be kind of second nature, but there's some operators out there who don't have a quote unquote chef in their kitchen. What are some things that they could immediately do to start tackling this food waste at their own restaurant? Some things they could keep an eye out for. Some of these guys are not chefs and they're not seeing things with a chef's eye. But what's something that you think they could maybe jump on right away that would make a difference?
Okay, so I think that I'm just going to tackle this in a different way. All right, so I think that the biggest problem that most restaurant operators do when tackling waste or anything like that or controlling food cost is they look for a cheaper product, right?
Mm,
They look for a more better purveyor, things like that. Honestly, all that shit's a waste of my time. I don't want to sit
right.
here and talk to 20 different purveyors about if our relationship's going to be good, right? Um, and I don't want to create those. I've already created relationships with purveyors. So really the best way is to look at your product, exactly what you have, and figure out how to utilize it completely. Like for example, we have a lamb course on the tasting menu. It's a lamb loin, and that's all we serve. But the lamb comes in a whole saddle. I have the choice. I have the choice where I can buy boneless lamb loin that's going to cost me $26.95 a pound and accept a bunch of money, right? Or I can buy the whole saddle, which costs me $11 a pound, but I'm going to end up with waste because I'm just getting that loin. But then what
Right.
we do with that is we take the loin and we use it for our tasting menu. We take the bones and we make a lamb stock with it to make the lamb jus for the tasting menu. And then we
Yeah.
take the fat and we render it, cook it, and then smoke it to baste the lamb in when we're searing it. And then we take the tenders and we chop them and we make a lamb tenderloin tartare dressed in al pastor for the taco makazi. So we
Oh, sick.
100% utilize the entire saddle. And that's what I really think that people that don't have chefs need to really look at is look at the product you're bringing in and see how you can utilize every single ounce of it. And that's maybe where technique and thought and stuff like that's going to come into play. But that's really how you control that bottom line, and you can still get high quality products, high quality produce, high quality proteins,
Yep.
and not worry about how much it costs because you are using 100% of that product. You know, like
I, I mean, that's, yeah, exactly. I mean, I think going the cheap route, you're sacrificing the guest experience. I think anytime you're sacrificing the guest experience, you're just on a death march that you just don't even know about. And it's just a
yeah,
matter of time before somebody catches up to that. So,
I
um,
mean, and like for another quick example, you know, we use a lot of chilies, right? And we do stupid things with them. Like we take serranos and we cut the very tip of them off to get these perfect little coins that don't have a hole in them. A natural hole that happens in the serrano. But then guess what? We're ended up with 3/4 of a serrano. Okay? But then what we do with that is we take all our chili scraps. You can go ahead and sign them. We take all our chili scraps, okay? And we then make a chili water with them that we pour into a bowl with dry ice underneath our agua chili that creates vapor smoke of chilies for the guests. So now they're getting a visual experience. They're getting an experience with their nose with smells, right? And they're also getting an experience with eating that agua chili all in one. So there's a whole little show within that, but they don't even realize that I didn't throw a single chili out because all those chilies got turned into something specific just to create that aspect of the dish.
that sounds like a very aviary inspired situation right there that
100%.
you
I mean,
created.
I
Yeah,
can't
I
lie to
love that.
anybody and say that my
Oh, I
time working
love
at the
that.
Linea Group didn't influence the way I cook, or my time
Yeah,
with Michael's
that's what it's
Carlson didn't
about for
influence the way I
sure.
cooked. I mean, Chicago is very much Grand Rapids City. Like, let's be honest. A lot of the people in the city that are cooking, a lot of the chefs that are running their own restaurants, a lot of the way we run our restaurants here is very much a product of the standards that Grand Rapids had put into the city.
Yeah.
You know,
Shout out to crazy, unbelievable. I mean, anybody in this business who has not read that book or knows who Grant Achatz is, then turn this off and go go read it.
right?
So two last questions. What's next for you and Carino? Where do you see this going in the next couple of years? Any future projects? Any plans you want to talk about?
So we got a lot going on. We're 6 months in. We're on a lot of lists. We're one of the, we're always in the list of best tasting menus, hottest restaurants in the city, all that. We just got some Michelin nods over here, so we're part of. They every year they
Amazing.
release their new editions before they release the
Congrats.
guide without their distinction. So we're feeling pretty good about that. Honestly, everything's going far better than I could imagine, man. I was so
That's
scared
great.
opening this up, man. I was shitting my pants, dude. I was like, my family's on the line, my life's on, my career, I felt like is on the
Yeah.
line. Because if I fuck this up, that's it. Like, they're not going to give me another chance,
That's the theory. That's that Sun Tzu theory is that people, when you have 300 people at your back, that's when people are like, okay, they're pushing against you. That's when you're like, okay, now I gotta respond, right?
Yeah.
I gotta make something happen. Some people need that, the pressure. I've heard people call it the wall before. What's your wall? Oh yeah, that matters.
Yeah, it does matter. And honestly, what I see for us is, just to continually progressing our guest experience, our food experience, etc. 100% here. Um, Obviously, we are searching for accolades, so that's what we're pushing for here, as well as being a sustainable restaurant and business in general. And I'm not talking about food sustainability. I'm talking about sustainable in general,
Yeah,
right?
being open.
Yeah, and being relevant,
Yeah,
being
right.
relevant and challenging ourselves. What I see from after this, honestly, is I want a Grand Achatz this corner of this neighborhood. You
Hell
know,
yeah,
I'm
love that.
sorry for the salon next door, but I'm coming for you. I want your space, and I want to open up a masa centric cafe where we can then have a boutique tortilleria and masa shop as well. So retail, where you can come in and get our fresh masa. You can come and get fresh tortillas, and I'm not talking about just like, hey, here's yellow and white. Like, yeah, of course we'll have those, but on Thursdays maybe we have black truffle case tortillas, or we have epazote tortillas, or we have oa santa tortillas, or we have shrimp head oil tortillas with guajillo chili.
I'm coming to Chicago just to see you. That's it. Period. That's right up my alley. My wife and I will be there. We'll live there for the next 3 days.
Right,
You guys
right. So I
make an
want to do
inn
that next
upstairs.
door, and then the place next door. There's a coffee shop opening up. Bless their souls. I hope they do well, but I'm coming for you too. Um, and I want to
My
turn
wife
that.
works for Soul Cycle, so I can tell you they may be closing a couple studios. So keep your eye on
All
that
right,
one.
all right, all right. Yeah, I wanna do. I want us to have a high end Latin American cocktail bar speakeasy type dealio. And when I say that, I mean I want it to be like the place where you walk in and you get cocktails and pop champagne and get shellfish towers. Except for these shellfish towers aren't lobster rolls with Rui or crab with Dijonnaise. You're getting like Morisco style shellfish towers from Matzlatan Sinaloa or something like that. You know
That's
what I mean? Like
that's
giant
very cool.
chicharrones towering over your head. Just really
I want to live
cool
there.
takes on bar snacks, Mexican bar snacks, right, in botanas, but in a very
Yeah.
elevated high end setting. I basically, Carino has been kind of referred to as a place that you might find in Mexico City, just the way it's designed, the way we run, and all that. And that's kind of where I see these two other places going. It's kind of like places that you would find in Mexico City, which you can't find here. I really want to elevate the cuisine that we're doing to a much higher respected level. I do believe that Mexican food
Yeah.
deserves to be on the same table as French food in terms of conversation. And at the end of the day, everything we do here is a product of passion. The restaurant, my wife's name's Carina. That's why the restaurant's
Oh, I
Cariño.
gotcha.
All
Okay.
right. So everything I do here is literally just a thank you to her, her family, my kitchen team down in Wild who accepted me as a gringo and showed them how to cook their own food in a certain manner that they never saw it. Like I remember when I took maguey leaves and made a maguey leaf bordelaise. These guys are minds blown. They're like, "Yo, I never thought of making that with the maguey leaf. We always just used it to cook barbacoa." And I'm like, "Yeah, but the sap is sweet, so let's make
Yeah.
a reduction with it or something." But all these people that have accepted me into their world and really treated me as their own, this is just a big like thank you, and this is how I feel, and this is all a product of passion. So like that's where I see us going as Carino and
I
as
love that.
Carino Hospitality Group in the future. I tell the associates here every day, I'm not trying to be here for 5 years. I'm not trying to be here for 2 years. I'm trying to be here for 15 years minimum.
Yeah.
And that's the
I love
goal.
that.
If we're not here for 15 years minimum, I failed.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
mean that passion is what's going to keep you going. I mean, on the Mexican front, I had the opportunity to spend the night with Christina Martinez, the barbacoa chef. I don't know if you've ever seen that episode.
Yep.
She's so passionate about what she does, and I hadn't until I'd had her barbacoa. I had never had barbacoa. Put it that way. Everything ended right there one night because that's what it's all about. So I know you're busy. You got a lot going on. You got a lot of passion behind you. So I'm sure you're eager to get going. But I have one last question for you. Maybe a little on the personal side.
Unfortunately, I like talking to you. We can sit here and talk all day.
Yeah, I'll FaceTime you. We got to go drop the kid off at school. I can FaceTime you on the way down there. If as a chef, I know this could be a tough question to answer, but if you had to cook a meal for one person, past or present, who would it be, and what would you make?
Oof. I don't know if I've ever
Oprah.
been asked that question a day in my life. If I had to cook one meal, and honestly, I'm gonna tear up just thinking about this, man.
Yeah,
I would love to cook for my grandfather. He passed away when I was 16 years old, when I was really not like trying to be a chef, but I was cooking in restaurants. And if I could just show him how far I've gotten with his installation of hard work ethic, loyalty, honesty, and character, because that's what that man had through and through, I think that would make my day. And honestly, it would be anything. Anything that it wouldn't be anything specific. It would just be cooking for him, and that's it. Literally,
I love that. I appreciate you sharing that because I have a similar situation. My mom passed when I was 18, and she never knew me to be a cook. Right, I was in high school. She never knew me do anything. She barely knew me to work. And my mom, and my grandmother were very influential in my cooking career. So I mean, I remember just very simple, basic things that were so critical to the outcome of the dish that they were like the best chefs that I ever knew. And I was like, it was so second nature to them. So yeah, I would go downstairs to my kitchen right now and just make Top Chef it out of the cupboard to be able to show them like I can make something here for you.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what people don't get. And that fucking passion to create for other people is what really drives a lot of us in this business. So
yeah, I mean, I tell my associates all the time, like, I don't cook for me. And I tell the guests this too. I cook for you guys. I cook for the guests. I cook for you. I cook for everybody but myself, because if I was cooking for myself, homie, we're gonna be hot dogs with chili. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
Like,
it's exactly. I mean, how many times have you? It's like the show The Bear, it gives me a little bit too much PTSD, but I did relate to the scenes where he was going home and like eating whatever was in the fridge.
So I'm a unicorn in that aspect. I haven't seen one episode of The Bear yet.
You don't need to watch it. You live it. But I swear to God, no bullshit. I watched that show and I was like, turn this off. This is way too much. I don't need this stress. I'm supposed to be enjoying this. The tick machine is going off. Somebody's getting screamed at. This person over here dropped the ice cream. I'm like, this show is too real. It's actually a testament to how great the show is. But it's not relaxing at all.
Yeah,
it's not.
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna watch it, but I do love that the general public that aren't in restaurants have been able to see that, because they've obviously been a lot more understanding, I think, since then.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
So tell them where they can get a hold of you. Obviously, Cariño, but tell them whatever you want to plug. Let's do it now. We'll put it in.
Just look us up. Carino Chicago on Instagram. You can see our photos there. You can make reservations there. We're at 4662 North Broadway in a very eclectic neighborhood of Chicago called Uptown.
Up and coming neighborhood, right?
Up and coming, yeah. Up and coming for sure. But yeah, just look us up, man. Carino Chicago. I mean, honestly, I just ran the analytics the other day. My sister did on Google. If you just search the word Carino in the entire world, we're the 5th hit. So you'll find us.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't even a fair question for him. I mean, if you guys just type it in there, you're going to see Eater, Michelin Guide, any kind of Chicago publication. You guys are all over the place. So I know you're busy. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day. And let's definitely stay in touch. I'm going to say this publicly. We are coming out to Chicago, even if it's my wife and I for the day, because that sounds like an incredible experience.
And then you let me know. We got you. We'll take care of you. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. And I really appreciate that last question you asked, man. Yeah, no one's ever asked me that. And that moved me a lot.
Oh, well, man, I appreciate you sharing and being vulnerable there. That's what this business is all about.
Yeah,
right. I mean,
sure.
it's taking that passion every day that we've learned growing up and shaping into something. And if we had that opportunity again, that's what I tell my daughter all the time. You never know when things are going to pass you by. So take advantage.
Early bird gets the worm, right?
Hell yeah, brother. Listen, Norman, congratulations on all your success. I look forward to watching you. I will definitely be there. And yeah, thanks again.
Super cool. Thank you, man.
Absolutely.
Have a good day.
You too.